the city of New Haven stood as the final bastion of humanity, a symbol of survival in a world ravaged by the undead. As the last standing city of hope, it had become a beacon for those who had managed to escape the horrors of the outside world. For years, the walls of New Haven had held strong against the ever-growing zombie horde. Yet, on this fateful morning, something was different. The air felt thick with unease as the sun rose, casting long shadows over the fortified gates. Inside the city, life continued as normal. People went about their daily routines, unaware that the world outside had begun to change in ways they couldn't comprehend. It was a day like any other, or so they thought. On the city's outskirts, the horizon was littered with the blackened silhouettes of abandoned vehicles and crumbling buildings, reminders of a once thriving world now lost to the undead plague. Among the survivors was Sergeant Alex Carter, a battle-hardened veteran who had witnessed the downfall of cities across the country. He had seen it all, the relentless march of the zombies, the desperation of the living, and the cruelty of those who turned on one another for survival. But New Haven was different. It had been a sanctuary, a place where hope still existed. For Alex, it had been a refuge from the chaos that had consumed the world. That morning, however, Alex's instincts were on high alert. He stood at the watchtower, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. Something was off. The usual movements of the undead outside the city's walls seemed different today. The zombies, once sluggish and aimless, were moving with purpose. They weren't just roaming, they were gathering. "Sergeant Carter," a voice called from behind him. It was Lieutenant Emma Hayes, a trusted ally and close friend. "We've got a situation. The patrol reports unusual activity just beyond the perimeter. You might want to see this for yourself." Alex turned to her, his expression unreadable. "What kind of activity?" Emma hesitated for a moment, her gaze shifting towards the distant hills. "They're organizing. It's like they're planning something." Alex's heart skipped a beat. Zombies planning? It was an idea that had never crossed his mind, but the way Emma spoke, with the tremor of fear in her voice, told him she wasn't exaggerating. Without a word, Alex motioned for Emma to lead the way. They descended the watchtower and made their way through the streets of New Haven, which were bustling with the usual hustle and bustle of daily life. The city's inhabitants were busy, but there was a sense of tension in the air. People exchanged wary glances as Alex and Emma passed, their unease growing. As they reached the command center, Alex was briefed by the head of security, Commander Ben Pierce. "We've been getting reports of strange movements along the eastern boundary. At first, we thought it was just the usual wandering groups of zombies, but there's something off about this. The undead seem to be communicating with each other, more coordinated than we've ever seen before." Alex frowned. "And you're sure it's not just a random encounter? A few zombies getting closer to the walls?" "No," Ben replied, shaking his head. "We've sent out scouts, and they've confirmed it. These zombies are moving in formation. And there's something else, they're changing." "Changing?" Alex asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Ben nodded. "Yes. They're evolving, Alex. We've seen evidence of some of them adapting to their environment, learning to avoid traps, finding ways to climb over obstacles. We don't know how or why, but it's happening." Alex's mind raced. For years, humanity had thought of zombies as mindless, ravenous creatures with no capacity for strategy or adaptation. But now, it seemed that this new wave of undead was something entirely different, something far more dangerous. The walls of New Haven, once thought to be impenetrable, might not be enough to hold back this new breed of zombies. "How long do we have?" Alex asked, his voice low and steady. Ben didn't answer immediately. He turned to the map on the wall, his finger tracing the outline of the city's defenses. "We're not sure. But if they keep advancing at this rate, it won't be long before they reach the city." A chill ran down Alex's spine. The fight for survival had just taken a deadly turn. The last bastion of hope in America was about to face its greatest test, and no one knew how the story would end. "We need to prepare," Alex said, his voice resolute. "Gather the troops. We're going to need everything we've got if we're going to survive this. As he turned to leave the command center, his mind raced with questions. How had the zombies evolved? And, more importantly, what would this mean for the people of New Haven? They were about to face an enemy unlike anything they had ever encountered before. And Alex Carter would have to lead them through the coming storm. The atmosphere in New Haven was thick with tension. The once peaceful city, a symbol of hope amidst the chaos of the world, now felt like a powder keg ready to explode. In the streets, citizens went about their daily business, but the usual sense of normalcy was gone. They could feel it in the air, the uncertainty that hung like a dark cloud over the entire city. Alex stood at the center of the command center, a map of New Haven spread out before him. His fingers traced the lines of the city's defenses, mentally going over the strategies they'd used to hold off the zombies for so long. But now, those strategies felt insufficient. The walls, once thought impenetrable, were no longer the fortress they had been. The zombies were adapting. And worse, they were organizing. We've got a serious problem, Alex muttered, more to himself than anyone else. These zombies are different. They're learning, evolving. We're not just dealing with the usual mindless horde. Emma stepped beside him, her eyes scanning the map. We've never seen anything like this before. Are we sure they're not just flukes? A few zombies acting strangely? Alex shook his head, his mind still racing. No, this is more than that. Ben's report. It's not a fluke. They're coordinating in ways we've never seen. And it's spreading. We need to act fast before it's too late. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sunk in. The people of New Haven had always trusted in their walls, their guns, and their resources. But if the zombies were evolving, if they were becoming more strategic, all those defenses might not be enough. Ben Pierce entered the room, his face grim. We've confirmed it. The zombies are moving in groups, as though they're planning something. And they're not just mindless creatures anymore. They're different. They're becoming more intelligent. There's something about this group that makes them more dangerous than anything we've faced. Alex's eyes narrowed as he looked at Ben. What makes you so sure? We've seen them work together to break through barricades. We've seen them set traps, things they've never done before. They're using the environment to their advantage, Ben explained, his voice tinged with disbelief. A chill ran down Alex's spine. It wasn't just an army of undead anymore, it was an intelligent force that had learned to survive. And that made them infinitely more dangerous. We need to gather the rest of the leadership, Alex said, his voice steady but urgent. Get the engineers, the strategists, everyone. We need to prepare for the worst. It's not just about holding the walls anymore. We have to think bigger. We need to outsmart them before they outsmart us. The command center buzzed with activity as the orders were passed down. Within moments, the city's leaders were assembling, each person aware that the calm they had known was about to shatter. There were whispers among the citizens, rumors of strange happenings outside the city walls. People were starting to panic, and for good reason. What if New Haven was no longer safe? Meanwhile, outside the city's fortified perimeter, the first signs of the Undead's evolution were becoming more apparent. From the watchtower, Alex observed the gathering hordes. They weren't just aimlessly wandering anymore. They were moving with purpose, their decayed forms slowly trudging toward New Haven, but it was how they moved that sent a shiver down Alex's spine. They weren't just following the same patterns as before. They were coordinating, as though they were being led. I don't like this, Emma muttered, standing beside him at the tower. They're too organized. We can't keep up with this for long. I know, Alex said, his voice low. But we're not giving up. Not without a fight. The zombies, once seen as nothing more than mindless monsters, had become something far worse, an intelligent, evolving threat. They were no longer a random occurrence. The undead were adapting, learning from their surroundings, and that made them unpredictable. The city's defenses were strong, but Alex knew that strength alone wouldn't be enough anymore. They needed more. They needed to understand what the zombies had become. What made them different? And more importantly, they needed to figure out how to stop them before they were completely overwhelmed. Back in the command center, plans were being drawn up for the city's defense, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was still to come. The zombies outside were no longer just attacking, they were planning. And that meant the fight for New Haven wasn't just a matter of holding the walls. It was a race against time to figure out how to outsmart an enemy that was no longer just an enemy. It was a battle of wits. A battle for survival. As Alex looked out over the city, his heart pounded in his chest. New Haven might have been the last city standing, but if the zombies kept evolving, it wouldn't be enough. And if they didn't find a way to stop them, this city of hope would become nothing more than another tomb in the wasteland of the world. The sun began to set, casting a blood-red hue over the city of New Haven. The calm facade of the day had slipped away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread that gripped the hearts of everyone within the city's walls. In the command center, Alex Carter stood at the front, his arms crossed, eyes locked on the map of the city. His mind raced with strategies, but each plan seemed more futile than the last. The enemy was evolving, adapting in ways no one had ever predicted. "What's our status?" Alex asked, his voice steady but laced with urgency. Ben Pierce, the head of security, looked up from the map, his face grim. "The perimeter patrols have reported sightings of the zombie horde getting closer. And it's not just that, they're moving with purpose. They're splitting into groups and working together to avoid traps. They've learned how to use the environment against us." Alex clenched his jaw, his frustration palpable. "We can't fight an enemy that's learning from us. We need to figure out their strategy before they figure out ours. Should we consider evacuating the civilians?" Emma Hayes, standing beside Alex, asked softly, but the fear in her voice was unmistakable. Alex shook his head, his gaze never leaving the map. "We don't have enough time. The city is our best chance for survival, and we can't afford to abandon it yet. We need to hold the line. It's our only shot." A cold silence fell over the room as the weight of the situation settled in. Everyone knew the risks, they had seen the world outside the city walls crumble to dust. They knew what would happen if New Haven fell. But no one wanted to say it out loud. If the city fell, humanity's last hope would be lost. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. It was one of the scouts, breathless and frantic. "Sergeant Carter, Lieutenant Hayes, you need to see this." Alex exchanged a sharp look with Emma, and without a word, they followed the scout out of the command center. The streets of New Haven were eerily quiet, the usual hum of daily life replaced by a haunting stillness. As they made their way toward the main watchtower, Alex's mind raced. What had they discovered? What had changed? Reaching the tower, the scout pointed toward the horizon. Alex's eyes followed the direction of his finger, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A massive horde of zombies had gathered just beyond the city's walls. But this time, it wasn't just a mindless swarm. They were organized, moving in coordinated waves, like an army ready to strike. "They're here," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're coming." Alex's heart raced. The zombies were no longer just a distant threat. They were right on their doorstep. And unlike every other time before, they weren't just mindlessly attacking, they were planning a siege. They were coming with purpose. "We need to prepare for a full assault," Alex said, his voice steady despite the tension in his chest. "Get the artillery units ready. We need to hit them hard before they breach the walls. And make sure the civilian evacuation routes are ready to go, just in case." As the scout and Emma hurried off to relay the orders, Alex stood at the edge of the tower, staring out at the oncoming horde. His mind was filled with questions. What had caused the zombies to change? Why were they working together? And what were they planning? The zombies outside New Haven's walls weren't just an army, they were a force of nature, an intelligent entity that had learned to adapt and evolve in ways that humanity had never imagined. Alex knew the city's defenses would be tested like never before. The walls, once thought to be impenetrable, would soon face their greatest challenge. Back in the command center, preparations were underway. The engineers and technicians worked frantically to activate the city's automated defenses, setting up traps and barriers along the walls. But everyone knew that these measures might not be enough. They had no idea what the zombies were capable of now. "Sergeant Carter," Ben's voice interrupted his thoughts as he entered the room. "We've spotted something else. There's a new group of zombies moving in from the east. They're not just mindlessly attacking. They're breaking off into smaller units and moving in a pattern. It's like they're coordinating an assault from multiple angles." Alex's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. "They're surrounding us. Trying to overwhelm the city from all sides." "Exactly," Ben said. "And it's happening faster than we can respond. We need to make a decision, Alex. Do we focus on holding the walls, or do we try to go after the source of this evolution? If we don't know what caused them to change, we might never stop them." Alex's mind raced. He had always believed that fighting the zombies was about surviving the day, protecting what was left of humanity. But now, it felt like a losing battle. The zombies were no longer just a mindless threat, they were something more. They were an enemy that had learned, adapted, and evolved. And that made them far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. "We hold the walls," Alex finally said, his voice filled with determination. "We can't afford to chase shadows. We need to buy time. If we can survive tonight, we'll have a better chance of understanding what we're up against. But if we let them breach the walls, it's over. New Haven falls." As the command center erupted into frantic activity, Alex felt a sense of grim resolve settle over him. The battle for New Haven had begun, and it was unlike anything they had ever fought before. The zombies had become more than just monsters, they had become a threat that could no longer be underestimated. And as the siege began, Alex knew that this fight would be one for the history books, no matter the outcome. This part ramps up the suspense and tension as the zombies prepare to launch a coordinated siege on New Haven. It pushes the city's defenses to the limit, with the growing realization that these zombies are now far more dangerous than they were before. The stakes are higher than ever, and the audience is left wondering how Alex and the survivors will manage to hold out against this evolving threat. The night had descended quickly, but the shadows that fell over New Haven were nothing compared to the darkness looming outside its walls. The once serene city was now on the brink of collapse. The zombies, no longer mindless husks, had become a strategic, intelligent force that knew how to break down everything the city's survivors had built. Alex Carter stood on the command center balcony, staring out over the city that had become a fortress, and now, a battlefield. The first signs of the siege were already visible. The zombies, broken into smaller groups, were methodically positioning themselves, moving in perfect coordination. Their movements were calculated, precise. They had learned how to avoid traps and were using the terrain to their advantage. It wasn't just an attack, it was an invasion. And Alex realized, with a cold shiver, that they were dealing with something much more dangerous than the mindless horde they had previously faced. The rumble of explosions broke his thoughts as he turned to the engineers activating the city's defense systems. The blast from the automated cannons sent a shockwave through the air, momentarily halting the advancing zombies. But it was clear this wouldn't last long. The zombies were relentless, and no amount of firepower seemed to be enough. "Status?" Alex asked, his voice tight with tension. Ben Pierce approached him, his face drawn and weary from hours of strategizing and defending. "They're pushing harder now. The automated defenses are working, but we're running low on resources. The walls are holding, but we can't keep this up for much longer." Alex's mind raced. He knew they had limited time before the horde overwhelmed their defenses. "Can we reinforce the walls?" "It's too late for that," Ben replied, his voice laced with frustration. "The zombies have already breached the eastern gate. We've sent teams to hold them off, but they're moving too fast. They're converging on the weakest points. It's only a matter of time before they break through everywhere." Alex gritted his teeth. The city had always prided itself on its defenses, but now it seemed they were nothing more than a temporary barrier. The zombies weren't just a force of nature, they were an intelligence, a cunning adversary that had learned to exploit their every weakness. "Get the civilians to the underground shelters," Alex ordered, his voice firm. "And make sure every available soldier is at the eastern gate. We need to contain them there, or we'll lose the whole city." Ben nodded, rallying the teams as the alarms blared in the distance. The city was in full emergency mode now. Soldiers moved quickly, securing barricades, checking weapons, and ushering civilians into the lower levels of the city. The atmosphere was one of grim determination, but there was also a growing fear. Everyone knew that this might be the last night New Haven stood. Meanwhile, Emma Hayes, who had been coordinating the evacuation, approached Alex with a report. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with concern. "Alex, I've got bad news. The civilians are in place, but the underground shelters might not hold. The zombies are adapting. They're beginning to target weak spots in the structure. It's like they know where to hit." Alex cursed under his breath. The thought that the last refuge for New Haven's survivors could be compromised was unbearable. "We can't lose the shelters," he said urgently. "We need to make sure they're secure. Is there any way to reinforce the structures?" "We're doing what we can," Emma replied, glancing over her shoulder toward the shelter's entrance. "But we don't have enough manpower down there to ensure the doors are secure. The zombies are getting closer, Alex. We can't afford to wait any longer." Alex's mind raced. He had to act fast. The city's walls were falling, the defenses were strained, and the civilians were only moments away from being trapped in a doomed shelter. But one thing was clear: their best chance of survival lay not in their walls, but in finding the source of the zombie evolution. "We need to find out what's driving this change," Alex said suddenly, his voice firm. "Ben, gather a team. We're going after the source." Ben stared at him, disbelief in his eyes. "You're not seriously suggesting we go out there, are you? The city's being overrun. We can't afford to leave the gates unguarded." "We don't have a choice," Alex said, his jaw set. "If we don't stop this from spreading, New Haven's done for. We need answers, Ben. Now." Ben's eyes narrowed as he processed Alex's words. He knew Alex was right. They couldn't just keep fighting blindly. The zombies had changed, and if they didn't find out how and why, they were going to lose more than just New Haven, they'd lose humanity's last chance for survival. "All right," Ben said, his voice resigned but determined. "I'll gather a team. We leave in 10. As Ben moved off to assemble a group, Alex turned back to Emma, his mind already turning over the implications of what was about to happen. If they could find the source of the zombie evolution, maybe, just maybe, they could stop it. But if they failed, it would mean the end of New Haven, and everything they had fought for. "We'll find a way," Alex said, meeting Emma's eyes with unwavering resolve. "We have to. For the people here. For the future." She nodded, but her eyes betrayed a deep fear. "And if we don't? What happens then?" Alex didn't have an answer. All he knew was that they had no other option. The siege was escalating, the zombies were closing in on every front, and time was running out. But the threat wasn't just outside the walls. The real danger lay within the evolution of the enemy. If they could stop that, they might still have a fighting chance. And so, as night fell deeper over New Haven, Alex Carter and his team prepared for a dangerous mission. The survival of the city, and perhaps humanity itself, rested on finding the source of the zombie transformation before it was too late. The night had swallowed New Haven whole, but the desperate fight for survival continued, a dark and unforgiving reality that seemed to weigh on everyone. Alex Carter stood at the edge of the city's eastern gates, now reinforced with hastily built barricades and traps. The sound of explosions and distant gunfire echoed through the streets as soldiers battled to hold back the wave of zombies that had already breached the outer defenses. But Alex knew that none of this would matter unless they could find the root cause of the zombies' sudden and terrifying evolution. The team Alex had assembled was small but determined: Ben Pierce, his right-hand man, Emma Hayes, who had proven herself to be resourceful and brave, and a few trusted soldiers, all seasoned veterans of the apocalypse, ready to face whatever horrors lay beyond the city walls. "You sure about this, Alex?" Ben asked, his voice low as he adjusted his gear. "We're walking straight into the heart of the beast. The perimeter's barely holding, and now we're gonna run straight into the wilds?" Alex met his gaze, a hard edge to his expression. "We're not walking in blind. We'll follow the trail the zombies are leaving behind, track the patterns. If we find out what's causing this, we can stop it. Otherwise, this fight's already lost." Ben nodded, though he didn't seem convinced. "And what if the cause is worse than we imagined? What if it's not something we can fix?" "We'll deal with it," Alex said, his voice unwavering. "We don't have any other choice." They were already losing the battle inside the city, but the real war would be fought out there, in the desolate wilderness where the zombies seemed to be coming from. The thought that the zombies could adapt so quickly, evolve into something more deadly, left a pit in Alex's stomach. But he couldn't afford to dwell on fear, not now. With the team fully equipped and ready, Alex gave the signal to move out. As they stepped through the gates of New Haven and into the thick, oppressive darkness of the wilderness beyond, the weight of their mission began to settle on their shoulders. The air was thick with humidity, and the once familiar landscape now seemed alien, twisted and overrun by the decaying remnants of civilization. The trees, once full of life, stood like silent sentinels, their branches now gnarly and barren. The team moved quickly, using every bit of training they had to stay silent and undetected. The zombies, however, had a way of making their presence known. The distant groan of an unseen horde carried through the air, sending a chill down the spines of everyone in the group. But they pushed forward, driven by the need for answers. After hours of careful navigation through the wilderness, the team came across something that none of them had expected: a small, abandoned research facility, its gates rusted and half destroyed by time. The overgrowth had nearly swallowed it whole, but there was something unsettling about the place. It didn't feel like an ordinary ruin, it felt alive. Alex motioned for the group to stop. "This is it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is where they're coming from." Ben raised an eyebrow. "What, a research facility? You think this is where they were experimenting with the zombies?" "Possibly," Alex replied, studying the structure. "But it's more than just that. There's something here, something that's been triggering these mutations." The team crept toward the building, their footsteps muffled by the thick underbrush. As they approached the entrance, the faint hum of electricity reached their ears, an unexpected sign of life in such a desolate place. "We're not alone," Emma murmured, her eyes scanning the perimeter for any signs of movement. "Something's still operating in there." Alex's instincts told him they had to be careful. But there was no turning back now. They had come too far to stop without finding out what had happened here. The door creaked as Alex pushed it open, the hinges protesting against years of neglect. The smell inside was thick, mold, decay, and something more sinister. The group moved quickly, their weapons at the ready, eyes darting around as they navigated the dark hallways. The facility was eerily quiet, but it didn't take long for them to find something that confirmed their worst fears. On the far wall of a large, dimly lit room, a series of monitors flickered to life as the team moved closer. The screens displayed live footage of New Haven, showing the city's walls and the zombies moving in. But it wasn't just the zombies that caught their attention, it was what they saw in the background. "What the hell is that?" Ben whispered, his voice thick with disbelief. On one of the screens, a figure moved in the shadows, a figure that seemed different. It wasn't a typical zombie. It moved with purpose, its eyes gleaming with an intelligence that none of them had ever seen in the undead. This creature wasn't just a monster, it was something else entirely. A skinwalker. Or something worse. Alex's heart sank as the realization hit him. This isn't just a virus. This is some kind of experiment. They've been modifying the zombies, creating new, smarter versions of them. The room seemed to close in around them as the weight of that discovery settled in. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting against something much more horrifying than they had ever imagined, an evolved, intelligent breed of zombie, one that could think, plan, and adapt. "Get ready," Alex said, his voice low and controlled. "We're not alone in here." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the hum of electricity grew louder. The sound of something heavy scraping against the floor echoed through the hallway. In the distance, the unmistakable growl of the undead filled the air. And it was coming closer. A low growl broke the silence as a creature emerged from the shadows, its features twisted and grotesque, its eyes burning with unnatural intelligence. This was no ordinary zombie. This was the result of twisted experimentation, a creature capable of thinking, of strategizing, and of leading the horde. And as the creature locked eyes with Alex, he knew the fight was far from over. This was only the beginning. The air inside the research facility was thick with tension as Alex and his team moved cautiously through the darkened corridors. The creature they had seen on the monitors wasn't just any mutated zombie, it was something far worse. Its eyes, gleaming with cold, calculating intelligence, had locked onto Alex with a predatory gaze, as if it knew exactly what they were here for. The creature's growl had reverberated in the silence, sending a chill down Alex's spine. They weren't alone in the facility anymore. Alex motioned for the team to stay close, his voice barely audible. "We need to keep moving. It's not safe here. Whatever's down here, it's not just zombies, it's something worse." Ben nodded, tightening his grip on his weapon. "I've never seen anything like that before. That thing, whatever it wasn't acting like the zombies we've been fighting." "Exactly," Alex said, his mind racing. "That creature, it's evolved. It's leading them. And if we don't stop it, it could lead to the end of everything we've been fighting for." They moved through the facility with careful steps, trying to remain as silent as possible, but the sense of impending danger was growing. Every shadow seemed to stretch unnaturally, every distant noise felt like the first sign of something moving closer. It wasn't just the walls that seemed to close in around them, the entire building felt alive, pulsing with a sense of malevolence. The team finally reached the control room, where the flickering monitors had shown the zombies advancing toward New Haven. As Alex stepped inside, his eyes scanned the array of screens, each one displaying different parts of the city, the walls, the defenses, and more ominously, a strange symbol that had been marked in several places around the city, including the areas the zombies had been targeting. "What is that?" Emma asked, pointing to the symbol on one of the screens. Alex studied it for a moment. The symbol seemed ancient, as if it had been deliberately placed. But there was something disturbingly familiar about it. "It looks like a marking," he said, his voice laced with confusion. "But it's not a typical graffiti tag. This is something deliberate. Someone's guiding them." Ben leaned in closer. "Someone's orchestrating the chaos," he murmured, his voice grim. "That thing we saw, the creature, the evolved zombie, it must be connected to whatever's behind this. It's leading them, commanding them. Whoever is pulling the strings here has taken control of the undead, and if we don't stop them, we might never be able to fight back." Alex felt a cold surge of fear at Ben's words. They were up against more than just mindless hordes. Whoever was behind this was far more dangerous. They had developed a weapon that could control, adapt, and evolve the undead into something far more terrifying than they had ever anticipated. If this enemy had the power to turn zombies into intelligent beings, what else could they be capable of? "We need to find out who's behind this," Alex said, determination settling into his voice. "And we need to take them down before they can launch the next phase of whatever they're planning." Emma stepped closer to one of the monitors, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she accessed more information. Her eyes widened as she read through the files. "Alex, you need to see this." He moved over to her side, his heart pounding in his chest as he glanced at the screen. What Emma had uncovered was a series of files detailing the development of a biological weapon, codenamed Project Exodus. According to the data, the project had been designed to evolve the zombie virus, turning the infected into more organized, intelligent beings that could think, plan, and even lead the horde. The goal was to create an unstoppable army, one that could overwhelm any human resistance. "What the hell is this?" Ben muttered, his voice thick with disbelief. "They were trying to weaponize the undead?" "Not just weaponize," Alex said, his voice tense. "They were trying to control them. To create an army of undead generals who could lead the others into battle. It's an apocalypse in the making." The realization hit Alex like a punch to the gut. The zombies weren't just mindless. They were a tool. A weapon. And someone had taken control of them, using them as pawns in a much larger, more terrifying game. "Who's behind this?" Emma asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "Who could possibly think this is a good idea?" Alex felt a surge of anger and helplessness, but he knew they didn't have the luxury of time to dwell on it. They had to act fast. The zombies were advancing, and if they didn't take down whoever was controlling them, it was only a matter of time before the entire world was overrun. "We don't know yet," Alex said, "but we will. We need to get to the heart of the facility. There has to be a command center, a central hub where all this is being orchestrated. If we can take that out, we might have a chance at stopping the evolution process. If we don't, this city will fall." Ben's eyes narrowed. "And the world with it." Alex's heart tightened at the truth in Ben's words. They had to act before it was too late. As the team prepared to move deeper into the facility, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. The creature they had seen earlier was close, too close. And this time, it wasn't alone. "They know we're here," Alex said, his voice low and urgent. "Get ready. We don't have much time." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the sound of scratching and growling filled the air. The doors slammed shut behind them with a deafening crash, trapping them inside. The creature had found them. And it wasn't just one monster they were facing. It was a whole army, led by the evolved undead. Alex gripped his weapon tightly. "We fight our way out. We stop this, now." With that, the team charged forward, weapons raised, ready to face whatever horrors awaited them in the heart of the beast. The tension inside the facility was unbearable. Alex could feel it in the pit of his stomach as he and his team made their way deeper into the heart of the building. The growls of the zombies grew louder, echoing through the halls like a warning. But it wasn't just the noise that had Alex on edge, it was the realization that they weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for the survival of the last standing city of hope in a world consumed by the undead. The creatures weren't mindless anymore. They had evolved, gained intelligence, and now they were being led by something even worse, a powerful and cunning undead leader, the one Alex had seen on the monitors earlier. If they didn't stop it now, New Haven would fall, and with it, any hope left for humanity. Ben's voice cut through the tense silence. "We need to find that command center and shut it down, Alex. Before it's too late." "I know," Alex replied, his tone grim. "But they're not going to let us walk out of here. This is their home now. They won't stop until they've taken everything." Emma, ever the optimist, added, "We have the element of surprise. They're focused on the city, on the attack. If we can move fast, we might just be able to take them down before they regroup." Alex didn't answer right away. His mind was racing, calculating their next move. Every step they took deeper into the facility brought them closer to their goal, and to the nightmare that awaited them. He knew they didn't have much time. The undead leader was out there, waiting, and with every passing second, the odds stacked against them grew larger. They reached a long, dimly lit corridor, and Alex signaled for the team to stop. Ahead, the door to what seemed like the command center stood at the end of the hall, heavily reinforced. But it wasn't just the door that worried Alex. It was the large, shadowy figure standing guard in front of it. The creature was unlike anything they had seen so far, towering and grotesque, its body twisting in unnatural ways. It was the evolved zombie, alive with intelligence, a leader to the horde. There was no mistaking it, this was the one Alex had seen on the monitors. The creature's eyes locked onto him, and for a split second, time seemed to slow down. It wasn't just a predator's gaze, it was calculating, deliberate. It knew what Alex was thinking. It knew they were coming for it. Ben whispered, "This is it. We go in, guns blazing?" Alex nodded. "We don't have a choice. This is the final stand." They readied their weapons, and Alex's heart hammered in his chest as they advanced, moving swiftly but cautiously toward the door. The creature didn't move. It just stood there, its cold eyes watching, waiting. "Now," Alex said, and with that, the team sprang into action. The first shot rang out, a sharp crack that echoed through the hallway. The creature's head jerked back, but it didn't fall. It wasn't a typical zombie, its body was stronger, its mind sharper. It let out a low growl and lunged toward them with terrifying speed. Alex barely had time to react as the creature closed the distance. It was upon them in an instant, its massive form crashing into the team, knocking Ben off his feet. Emma screamed, trying to fire her weapon, but the creature was too fast. It swiped at her, its claws raking across her arm, leaving deep gashes in their wake. "Emma!" Alex shouted, rushing to her side. But the creature didn't give them time to regroup. It turned its attention back to Alex, its eyes glowing with malicious intent. Alex raised his weapon, aiming at the creature's head, but before he could pull the trigger, it lunged again, its claws slashing through the air. The team fought back with everything they had, firing relentlessly at the creature, but it seemed impervious to their attacks. It was too powerful, too fast. The evolved zombie wasn't just a mindless monster, it was a tactical force, a leader that could think and plan. And now, it was leading the assault against New Haven. Ben recovered, tackling the creature from behind, distracting it long enough for Alex to get a clear shot. Without hesitation, Alex fired, the bullet piercing the creature's skull. But even as the creature staggered, it didn't fall. Its glowing eyes locked onto Alex one last time, as if to say, "You cannot win." With a final, monstrous scream, the creature collapsed, its body twitching as it hit the ground. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ragged breathing of the team. "We did it," Ben said, standing over the creature's lifeless body. But there was no joy in his voice. The battle was far from over. Alex wiped the sweat from his brow, his heart still pounding in his chest. "This isn't over. The horde is still out there, and they'll keep coming until we stop the source." They pushed through the door, which creaked as it slowly opened. Inside, the command center was a chaotic mess of computers, screens, and glowing equipment. But it wasn't the technology that caught their attention, it was the figure standing at the far end of the room. A man. He was tall, dressed in a tattered lab coat, his face hidden in the shadows. But Alex could see the faint glint of madness in his eyes as he turned to face them. "So, you've made it this far," the man said, his voice cold and devoid of any emotion. "But you're too late. You've already lost." Alex's blood ran cold as he realized the truth. The man wasn't just a scientist, he was the one behind Project Exodus. He had orchestrated everything, created the intelligent undead, and had been pulling the strings all along. "You're the one who's been controlling them," Alex said, his voice steady despite the growing rage inside him. "You're the reason this city is about to fall." The man chuckled darkly. "I didn't create them for the city. I created them for something far greater. You're just pawns in a much larger game." With that, he turned, his fingers hovering over a series of buttons. "But it's too late. The virus is already spreading beyond your city. It's already begun." Suddenly, alarms began to blare, and the screens flickered to life, displaying a countdown to the end. Part 7 builds to an explosive confrontation between Alex's team and the evolved undead leader. They fight for their lives and for New Haven, knowing that even if they defeat the creature, the mastermind behind the apocalypse is still at large. The twist reveals that the true enemy has been controlling everything from the start, and the countdown to their doom begins. The suspense reaches a boiling point as Alex faces a deadly new challenge in the final moments before the endgame. The countdown echoed through the facility, each second ticking away like a death sentence. The blaring alarms reverberated in Alex's ears, drowning out everything else. In front of them stood the man responsible for everything, Project Exodus, the rise of the evolved zombies, and the fall of humanity. His cold, emotionless gaze sent chills down Alex's spine. The man didn't flinch as the team raised their weapons. He was too calm, too sure of himself. But Alex wasn't backing down. They had come this far, and they weren't going to stop now. "Who are you?" Alex demanded, his voice steady despite the overwhelming tension. "Why do this? Why turn the world into a living hell?" The man smirked, his eyes gleaming with a twisted sense of superiority. "I'm just a scientist," he said, his voice almost playful. "I did what needed to be done. Humanity was on the brink of collapse. I gave it a new chance. The zombies, they're the future. The future of evolution. The future of control." Ben stepped forward, fury in his eyes. "You're sick. You think this is the future? You've turned the world into a nightmare." The man's smile widened, and he slowly raised his hands, palms open as if presenting a gift. "I've created something greater than any human could ever be. The virus, the mutations, these are the next step in evolution. The weak die, and the strong survive. The undead, they'll rise again and again, until only the strongest remain." Alex clenched his fists. "You're insane. You've condemned everyone." "Everyone?" The man's voice was cold now, as if he were talking about an inevitable fact. "No, I've only given humanity what it deserves. You'll see, when the virus spreads across the world, you'll all bow to the new order. There's no escaping it." The screens in the room flickered again, showing the countdown now at mere minutes. The man took a step toward a central console, his fingers hovering over a large red button. "And now," he said softly, "the final stage begins. You can't stop it. Not now. Not ever." Alex's mind raced. They didn't have time to hesitate. If they didn't stop the countdown, the virus would spread across New Haven and beyond, wiping out any chance of survival. The city, humanity's last hope, would be lost forever. Without a second thought, Alex lunged forward, knocking the man away from the console. The man let out a surprised shout but quickly recovered, his eyes flashing with fury. "You think you can stop me? You're not the future," Alex shot back, as he and Ben grabbed the man, pinning him to the ground. "You're just the last remnant of humanity's worst mistake." Emma ran to the console, her hands flying over the buttons, trying to disable the countdown. But it was complicated. Every line of code, every system was designed to make sure no one could interfere. The system was locked. "I can't stop it," Emma shouted in frustration. Alex didn't hesitate. He turned to the man. "Tell me how to stop it. Now." The man smirked. "You can't. The system is designed to run autonomously. Even if I die, the virus will still be released." Alex's mind raced. There had to be something. The man couldn't be bluffing. If there was one thing Alex knew, it was that he couldn't afford to give up. Not now. Not when they were so close. Suddenly, a flicker of memory surged in Alex's mind. There was something, Project Exodus. The files they had found earlier mentioned a failsafe, a hidden key that could disable the countdown. The man had mentioned creating something greater than humanity, but even the most twisted systems had weaknesses. "You lied," Alex said, his voice low. "There's a failsafe. You didn't think of everything, did you?" The man's smirk faltered. "You think you can find it? It's too late. You've lost." Emma's hands moved faster, her eyes narrowed in concentration. "I'm trying to find it," she said, her voice steady despite the pressure. "Just give me a second." The man struggled under Ben's hold, his eyes wild with desperation. "You think you can stop it? You'll be too late. The virus is unstoppable now. No one can stop what's coming." Alex stepped forward, his resolve firm. "We've fought too hard to give up now. Tell me where it is." The man's expression twisted with rage. "You're wasting your time. The failsafe is encrypted. Only the key can unlock it, and even if you had it, you'd never find it in time. But as the man spoke, a realization hit Alex like a bolt of lightning. The failsafe wasn't just a code or a key, it was a person. The key was someone who knew the system, who could stop it from the inside. Someone like the man himself. "You're the key," Alex said, his voice cold as ice. "You're the one who created it. You know how to stop it." The man's face contorted with rage. "You think you can make me help you? I'll never help you. It's too late." But Alex didn't give him the chance to fight back. He grabbed the man by the collar and pulled him close. "If you want your twisted vision to live on, then help us. Stop the countdown. Otherwise, everything you've done will be for nothing." The man's defiance faltered, and for a moment, Alex saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. The countdown was at its final seconds. "Fine," the man spat, his voice a venomous whisper. "I'll stop it. But you'll never win." With trembling fingers, the man reached for the console, entering the final code that disabled the countdown. The screens blinked out one by one, and the deafening alarms stopped. The virus had been halted. New Haven was safe, for now. But Alex knew the fight was far from over. They had won this battle, but the war was far from finished. The man slumped to the ground, defeated, as Alex turned to his team. "It's not over," he said. "The world's not safe yet. But this is a start." As they made their way out of the facility, Alex looked toward the horizon. The city of New Haven was still standing. But the real battle was yet to come. Part 8 concludes the saga with a tense standoff between Alex and the mastermind behind the apocalyptic outbreak. The countdown to the virus's release is halted in the nick of time, but the true war for humanity's survival is just beginning. With the city saved, Alex and his team are left to face the consequences of their victory, and the reality that the battle is far from over.